Ladies and gentlemen, let's Red Game Intercom video. We're going to be going through a PC buyer's guide for July 2014 for the bleeding edge PC. So we're going to be giving both UK and US prices. I've done this as an article as well, which it does have links to everything as well as the model names and so on if you happen to miss something, so don't worry too much. So this budget is going to be between 1600, or let's say 1500, 1600 US dollars up to about 2000 US dollars. The reason it's got a price range is because, well, some of it depends on if you want to go SLI/Crossfire or not. If you're happy with just one GPU, it's going to cost you obviously less. I've also got the UK prices in, as I've mentioned, and all of this is an article. So the focus on this is gaming, and it's going to be gaming on the highest possible settings for either triple monitor setups or 4K. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not 1080p focused. If you're 1080p focused, to be honest, you could get away with like a $750/$800 system. If you're 1440p, then about 1K can do you. This system is going to kick butt. So, with all of that said, let us begin, shall we? So, the CPU. There's not really any other CPU to start out with other than the i7-4770K. It's available for 313 or 233, either US dollars or Great British pounds, respectively. There are other CPUs out, which are certainly more powerful, but my logic for this is tried and trusted. For the most part, you're not going to need the extra performance for gaming. It's better to throw it on, let's say, better GPU. And so, in this case, in my personal opinion, this shall do you fine. You could also go for the 4670, which would save you about 100 US dollars. The reason, however, I've selected the 4770 is because you do get that hyperthreading, which in the case of certain games can definitely make a difference. We know that DX12, for example, is definitely going to become more multi-thread orientated. You've also got things such as AMD's Mantle, and since we do have an AMD option for the GPU, it just makes more sense. You do, of course, also get very good overclocking options for this as well, and we will be using a pretty good cooling solution. We'll get to that in just a second. 8 megabytes of level 3 cache, so you're running at 3.5 gigahertz standard or turbo all the way up to 3.9, but most likely with a good overclocking solution, providing you don't absolutely fail at the silicon lottery, you're going to be hitting 4.4, 4.5 gigahertz plus anyway. For motherboard, for 165 US dollars or 113 Great British pounds, ASRock Z87 Extreme 4. So why this motherboard? Well, because for the price, considering it's fairly reasonable, considering A, you got great overclocking options, and B, it doesn't V-drop constantly. Plus as well, it does support the other usual gubbins you'd expect: Crossfire support, SLI, SATA 3, USB 3, PCIe 3, all the other bits and pieces that you would expect. There's not too much exciting to say about this motherboard. I know that's not exactly the greatest sales pitch in the whole history of the world, but the bottom line is, it does the job. You're not really going to want more than this unless you're going to be going super extreme overclocking. And for 99% of all the users out, this motherboard is going to easily have all of the features that you're ever going to want. For RAM, 16GB G-Skill DDR3, of course, 2400 MHz Trident X. So this is going to cost you $194 or about 150 Great British pounds. Why 16 gigs? Well, 8 gigabytes is arguable now, but to be honest with you, considering just how memory intensive some games are already becoming, and the fact the next generation consoles are already out and they've got about 5 gigabytes usable, and of course PC assets as they are definitely going to be a lot higher in terms of texture quality and so on, it just makes sense. I don't really think, especially for users who are most likely going to be using larger screens and most likely power users anyway, I don't really think it makes sense to save that little bit of cache. It just is a lot better idea in my opinion to go with 16 gigs. That's not to say you can't go with 32. I just don't think for 99% of users who are focused only on games, you're ever going to notice the difference. So I think 16 gigabytes That's 2 sticks of 8. It just makes the most sense. This memory, it gives you good memory bandwidth, good reasonable timings as well. So yeah, a good solid make. Definitely G-Skill is one of my favorites. For graphics cards, we're going to be using AMD. We're going to be using R9 290X, so 4 gigabytes. That's going to cost you $509 or 486. So why have I gone with AMD? Actually, I personally own a GTX 780 Ti, but I've decided for this one to go with AMD. There's a couple of reasons for this, actually. I don't really feel either card's better. But the reason I've eventually settled on AMD after kind of a bit of umming and ahhing is a couple of reasons. One, it's cheaper than the 780 Ti SLI, than the 780 Ti. So you're saving money. Yes, it's going to be slower, but not amazingly slower. And also, when you consider that the 780 Ti, if you want 6 gigabytes of RAM, you've got to pay the extra bit of a price premium. It doesn't really make sense, especially since we're going for 4K anyway. The extra memory is going to make the difference in this case. So it just made sense, since ultimately we are building this with the budget of possibly going with Crossfire. It just makes the most logical sense to go with the R9 290X. If you aren't quite as rich, you could go with the 290 and Crossfire that. You wouldn't be losing a massive amount of performance as well. So that's definitely an option. Or, I suppose, you could also go with the 780. There's just no point going with the Titan Black, or any of the Titans actually. It's just absolutely pointless unless you're going for compute reasons. For SSD, well, $110 will buy you a SanDisk Ultra Plus 256 gigs. I don't really think there's much to say other than it's fast. It whizzes around 530 megabytes per second. That's transfer rate. That's obviously peak. SATA 3. I think 256 gigs is about the best value you can get right now. It's going to be big enough where you can fit operating system, your most used applications, as well as a few other bits and bobs on it without too much issue. Power supply. Corsair Professional HX 750 watt. Why have I gone with this? Well, there was a logical reason. It's just about the best value for the performance you get. It's going to cost you $140 US, which is 88 Great British pounds. There are some who might want to go for 850 watt. Honestly, if you're going to, say, go with SLI R9s, and you're going to be going with a very cool system, in other words, you're going to be using like water cooling, and you're going to be having a lot of hard drives, and you're going to be heavily overclocking, and a lot of fans and all the other bits and pieces, you could possibly go with 850. For everyone else, especially if you're just going to be focused on a single a single GPU, then 750 will do. This is modular as well, which means you can be a bit tidier. Pretty damn good value for money PSU, and once again, Corsair, I swear by their products. Next one would be the case. Now, many know that I absolutely loathe giving a recommendation for the case, but I've decided to give one in this case, if you excuse the pun. So we're going to be using an NZXT. That's a Phantom 410. It's going to cost you $80 or around the same Great British pounds. We get screwed over if you're a Brit. Why this case? Well, for start, you can remove hard drive cases, which means that hard drive cages. Which means that you can put in as big a GPU as you like. You don't have to have that horrible fear of, oh my god, is my GPU going to fit? Which is a pretty important thing for cases. It's easy to work on. It's good. It's got good cable management, USB 3 ports, and all the other gubbins you'd expect on it. It also has a nice slot for water cooling, if that's your gig, and pretty much all the other bits and pieces that you could ever possibly want for a case. For the price as well, it's just a good value for money. Optical drive. To be honest with you, I just went for the cheapest bloody drive on well, available. It was $22 US. It's an Asus 24 speed DVD writer. £16 if you're paying from the UK. Why? Well, some of us, including me, are just too lazy to be bothered to make a USB boot drive, to be honest. Plus, there are some times you might want optical media, so I figured it might as well include it. If you've got the ability to reuse it, please do. Don't bother to waste money. You might also be tempted to go with Blu-ray, but we're focused primarily on gaming here, so no point squeezing that into the budget. Next up, hard drive, Seagate Barracuda, 2 terabytes, SATA 3. That's going to cost you $83 US, or if you're paying in pounds, about 58 Great British pounds. It's fast, as you'd expect from a mechanical drive. That's not exactly a great selling point if you're used to, say, SSD speeds, but it's going to be good enough for games. If you're especially used to an old mechanical hard drive, it's going to feel like a revelation. Not much to say about this one. Everyone knows about hard drives, I'm sure you'll agree. 7200 RPM, SATA 3, all the other bits and pieces you'd expect. It's good enough for pretty much gaming. It's going to be fine for if you happen to want to do frapsing to it and all the other bits and pieces. So it's a reasonably solid drive. I've got 2 cooling solutions for you. Not that you need both at the same time, but it's just that we've got 2 options. So the first option would be a Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo. That's $29.99 or £27. Why have I got this in? Well, some people just don't want to overclock too much, which is fair enough. You might just not be comfortable with it. You might feel that the default performance is good enough, or it could be that you're just not comfortable with water cooling, which we'll get into in just a moment, in which case this is a good solid cooler. It's not going to allow you to overclock super amounts, but it will be solid enough to get a couple of extra 100 megahertz out of it without too much difficulty. Then again, it depends on your region. If you happen to be in, say, a fairly cool part of the world, or it happens to be winter time, then you're definitely going to get more mileage out of it, of course. For $100 or for 110 Great British pounds, you can take the Thermaltake Water 3.0 Extreme. So this is an all-inclusive, all-in-one rig. So that basically means you don't have to buy, say, separate pipes and fittings and other bits and pieces all in one. It does all the job for you. So you just kind of fit it all together based on the kit. It definitely will drop your temperatures. It'll be fairly quiet as well. There's not much more to say about this. It's pretty much going to be perfect if you're looking to get into water cooling and you've got around this budget. It is going to pretty much do you a great service. That's pretty much it, actually, for the parts list. The only other thing to mention is the result for our expenditure. The end result is going to cost you $1,645 or it's going to cost you just over 2k if you're going to be getting the second GPU. On the other hand, it's going to cost you 1,250 Great British pounds or £1,700 roughly if you're buying the second GPU. Obviously, I say roughly because prices fluctuate all the time. It could be the price goes down $5 here, or it could go up $5 there. But roughly speaking, these are the prices you're going to get. Is it worth going for the second GPU? If you're looking for the highest possible frame rates and triple monitors, then yes. On the other hand, if you're 1440p focused, to be honest with you, you could easily get away with just a single GPU. But then again, if you're just 1440p focused, you don't need this system. For the most part, you could probably be happy to just use a $1,000 rig, and that would be absolutely fine. And once again, if you're 1080p focused, then, well, a $750/$800 rig easily will accommodate all of your needs. Anyway, hopefully that'll do the trick for you guys. I'll see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.